makes my heart go pitter-pat because part of creating great culture is taking the initiative in having great conversations with people you may or may not know or be comfortable with. So you're already showing yourselves to be rockstar initiative takers just by being in the room. Give yourselves a round of applause. That is not a small thing. So hello, my name is Jenny Drescher. I am one of the principals at the Boulder Company. This is my business partner, Ellen. We're here with our friends at IT Direct because we're business buddies and we like to get involved in projects together that rustle things and stir the pot. How many of you can identify with that? I love, we're in a room full of pot stirrers, friends. Does this make you feel good? This makes me feel really good. So before we get to our wonderful panelists, I'm going to invite you to take another step in getting to know one another a little bit today and to help pave the path for this conversation about workplace culture. Are you game?
Yeah.
All right. So if you can, try to, I'm going to give you 10 seconds to do this. I'd like you to find a partner, someone you maybe aren't here with. So take 10 seconds and find a partner, and real quick moment of hygiene. When I raise my hand, everybody else is going to raise their hand with me, and we're all going to be quiet so that way we can silence the room because you're so delightfully raucous, but we do need to stay on time. Fair?
Fair.
Cool. All right, take 10 seconds. Find a partner. 10, 9, 8, about. You're going to talk about 3 simple things. The first thing, you're going to share space in your conversation with your partner, and I want you to talk about what's a risk that you've taken in your organization, or maybe in an organization in your past career. Either one is fine. What's a risk that you have taken that led to an outcome that was really good or really effective, or it helped you solve a problem? A risk that worked out is a simple way of putting it. A risk you took that worked out. That's question 1. Question 2, what would you like to gain by being here in this room today with all these great people and from these smart folks? And then also, what can you contribute to the room today? Those 3 questions: risk, gain, contribute. Take a couple minutes, have that conversation with each other. Thank you, Ellen. Things like, I can't believe that worked! And I was so scared. And it was so great, I'm glad I did it. So these are the kinds of things that we bump up against when we're talking about risk. And it becomes a very important part of the conversation about culture. Because if we're in an environment where people feel like they can't take a risk, then we miss what we might gain, and we miss what others might contribute. Make sense?
Yes.
So that's part of why we invite you to take on that little question and play with it in your head and bring it back to your workplace and start considering the role of those questions in how you're considering culture in your organization. So without further ado, I'd like to introduce my business partner and my very best friend, Ellen Ornato, and she's going to moderate for us today.
Thank you and welcome. Just to give you a 2-second background, the Boulder Company, we work with organizations that are accelerating in the center of your organization to make sure that the culture supports the growth that you want to add within your organization. You define how you want to grow at usually senior levels, but if the folks who are going to be the recipients of the decisions that are made aren't involved in the decision making and you're expecting them to implement, how does that work? When we don't involve folks in the decision making. It doesn't work. Okay, thank you. We're going to be contributing all along the way. So yeah, all right. So here's what we're going to do today. We're going to explore with these 3 amazing people what they know about building corporate cultures, what they know about what works and what doesn't work, and also what they're proud of in terms of their own backgrounds. So what I'm going to do is we're going to start with Kylie, and I'm going to ask you, we're just going to go down, take 2 minutes each, just introduce yourself, talk about your role within your company. Go.
Sounds great.
Thank you.
All right, so my name is Kylie Carbone. We got rid of titles, which is still kind of new to me. So I just work in talent development. I used to have a title, and our biggest thing, I used to be someone. So we got rid of titles, just a quick aside, because our whole goal is we want to serve the customer. So every day that looks a little bit different. My function is talent development. I came from marketing, so sometimes I'll help out in sales and marketing. But I really focus on helping our employees to recognize and achieve their greatest potential. That is part of the vision of our organization. We are a manufacturer of custom injection molds. We're in Plainfield. And in 2014, our average age was 50, and we had no apprentices. Our current average age is 31, and I swear we have no journeymen in our industry right now. So we've had a really big shift in what and who makes up our organization, and just a lot of training goes into that and helping be a support person. And you know, as far as culture goes, I talked about our vision, right? Part of it is to help people recognize and achieve their greatest potential. Well, we didn't have that back in 2014. And I've been with the team since 2013, so I've been along this journey of who we were, who we've become, and really just helping whenever I can along the way. So that's me in a nutshell.
Thank you. John.
John Payson, I'm the Director of Operations here at IT Direct. My job, really what I help to contribute to the culture here at IT Direct, really stems around 3 facets. Recruiting, we've realized that one of the best ways to have a great culture is to catch it upstream. So doing that means getting the right people in the door even before we're interviewing. So refining that screening process, refining that filtering, finding great people so that every time we have an interview, I shouldn't say every time, but it feels like every time we have an interview, you just want to hire that person. You're not wasting hours and hours going through interviews that you just feel beat up. The second piece is employee development. We've spent a lot of time over the last few years really developing our team. And really helping people to feel like they're empowered, they're growing, their career has a very solid path, and more importantly, they're just confident every day in their job. The last piece is really just making sure IT Direct is one of the best places to work. When I started this company, he had a vision where it has to be a company that he would enjoy coming to work for every day, even if he didn't own it, and we've really tried to keep that vision going every day. Making sure the building is safe, making sure people feel effective every day, making sure they come to work happy. All those pieces are super important, so keeping all that in mind on a day in, day out basis. I mean, in every meeting, making sure we're communicating across the board, keeping everything all at the top level.
Wonderful. Thank you. Tonya.
And I am Tonya Daddio, Director of Firm Culture at Connecticut Wealth Management. I've been with the firm for about 10 years at this point. I started with the organization when they were first part of just an accounting firm. We had a wealth management division with 7 people. So we branched off. Those 7 people went off and created Connecticut Wealth Management, and now we have 25 employees at the firm. We have always been a people-first culture, and I'm proud to say we continue to be that to this day. My focus within the organization is to ensure that the client experience is enhanced, and I also work on marketing as well with client events and team events, and just working across the board with every single team member on various culture initiatives.
Wonderful. So 3 very different industries, right? So we're going to see how culture is defined in your organizations now. So we'll start with Tonya, and I'm going to ask you, did your organization, as you went from 7 to 25 employees, did you make a conscious decision in terms of the development of your culture? And who are the culture warriors in your organization, if that's the case?
So we definitely made a conscious decision. My role itself is defined within the organization as the Director of Firm Culture, a job description and whatnot. My employer decided that, you know what, he wanted to focus primarily on ensuring that you did have a wonderful work environment. So what we did was we invested within the Best Places to Work survey. That was one of the things that we did. We made sure that we did get employee feedback, and we took that feedback and we analyzed it and we determined where do we need to improve? Like, what are those pieces that we need to improve upon within the organization? Getting that feedback, we actually came back with 3 pieces that people wanted to identify with. People wanted to make sure that we had a wellness program, so we invested within a wellness program in our organization. We have Fresh Fruit Fridays, which are fantastic. We have healthy snacks all the time. We have meditation room, we have massages and whatnot, and all that sounds great, but it comes back to making sure that the employees themselves feel good about themselves. On top of it, the other one within that initiative, we also developed a gym, believe it or not. So we have a gym at work, and we do lunch break yogas, and we also do training with a personal trainer. So we have workouts after work as well. And that's bringing the team together.
Mm-hmm.
That's bringing the team, we're working out together, it's developing those relationships. On top of it, we found that we wanted to get involved more with the community. So we developed a community outreach program within the organization. And again, we solicited feedback from our employees. What we did was we created a survey, again, reaching out to all the individuals within the organization, getting that feedback, determining what's important to them, what will give them some type of buy-in in a sense, but have them feel like they're part of the organization, have them feel like they belong and valued and that their opinion matters. So we determined that we wanted to work with 3 community outreach programs, one being Habitat for Humanity, so we could incorporate a team build, we could do a women's build, we could also ask our clients to join us, developing those relationships, because that's part of our culture too. Part of our culture is to ensure that we're creating lasting relationships with our clients, and volunteering and bringing the team together, we're definitely bringing them together. Hartford Youth Scholars, education was important to our team, so we developed that relationship with Hartford Youth Scholars to ensure that we're back into the community. And then lastly, we decided to work with the Bridge Family Center here in West Hartford, and mental health was one of those pieces that people wanted to support. On top of that, we have Think Pink events and whatnot, I should say, just to kind of bring in the community within those events too.
Wonderful.
So that was important.
Great. So what we're going to do now, what do you have to add to that in terms of how intentional was the development of culture within your organizations? Why don't we start here with Kylie?
Okay, how many, just by a show of hands, how many people in here are manufacturers? All right, and what is your #1 challenge? Anybody can shout it out.
Recruiting.
Yeah, finding people, right? Like no matter where you go, finding people is seems to be the #1 challenge in manufacturing. And I would say that the more other industries that I talk to, it's a common problem. We just as manufacturers, we're special, right? So we say it's just us. So the reason why I bring that up is that in 2013, we had one of our senior guys say, hey, in about 6 months I'm gonna retire. I'm more than happy to train my replacement, and I just, I want to leave on good terms with you guys. And we're like, oh, John, thank you. That's so great. Kylie, go run a job search. So I did, and I got 4 candidates to fill this position. And 3 of them were retired. It's a toolmaker position, so they were retired looking for part-time work. And one of them was a gentleman who was from Pennsylvania. He had a really young family, and he didn't have the support structure to relocate to Connecticut. So at that point, we said, okay, the sustainability of our organization is really on the line here, with the average age of our company somewhere in the 50s. In maybe 10, toolmakers are stubborn, so more like 20 years, we may not have an organization. So at that point, we really said, okay, we need to be more strategic in how we're recruiting. And hey, we kind of saw this as that tipping point of, well, if we have to change and we have to be able to develop our own talent internally, what else do we want to change? And that was when the owner of the company, Ray Coombs, really, he sat down and did his vision board, and it was like, okay, what do you want in an organization? What does perfect look like for you? And very similar to what you were talking about with Ari, is that wanting, he always says when we have schools come in, he stopped working at the age of 19 when he found exactly what it is that he loves. And he wants that for everybody. So we kind of set, at that point, we took Ray's vision, what does perfect look like, and it really came down to people. Our philosophy is now hire for character and train for skill. It's really easy to train somebody how to be a machinist, how to be a molding technician. It's really hard to train somebody how to be a good employee. So if you can find that person that's a fit, you can train them to do anything. However, you need to have the right infrastructure in place. So that's in 2012, 2013, long story long, because we needed to kind of change the way we were recruiting. That's when we said, hey, let's change our culture a little bit too.
Okay, thank you. John?
Cool.
Short, because I'm going to get to the next one.
Yeah, all right, so short. So, I mean, culture is kind of hard to not be intentional. And I think culture has a blend of a few things. So I'm going to skip all the recruiting stuff because Kylie did an awesome job there. But culture has a blend of tangible and intangible items. And a lot of companies can feel like, man, we need a good culture and we can just go buy it. Let's buy some pool tables. Let's buy a kegerator. Let's buy these things that people want. And that's like, I like to think of culture as like a cupcake. All those tangible items, they're just the sprinkles on top. The cake of the culture itself are the people. Right, so the kegerator, the pool table, the nap room, they're great, but they don't create great people and people who love coming to work every day. Yeah. And then on top of that, what do you have that makes the cake better, right? So how are you making the cake taste better? What's the frosting? What are you doing to develop that cake? What are you doing to make that cake stand out to be different? The kegerator, like I said, just the sprinkles on top. So it's intentional in that aspect because you've got to think about all the ingredients that go into play, not just how can I buy a cupcake.
Yeah. So what has IT Direct done specifically that you would say might have been risky in terms of a decision for what you do for your employees, or I don't know how to define this better, but we talked about that category of risk and taking risks to build a culture that you want. So where have you seen that?
I mean, I've got a few categories, right? Like there's the easy ones, which are like, there's a financial risk. To add to the recruiting that we talked about before, we have spent over the years hundreds of thousands of dollars on our recruiting strategies, between going through different recruiters, between figuring out a process that works, and we've boiled down to this end solution. I shouldn't say end because it's always evolving, but the solution we've really narrowed down to over the last couple of years, it involves a lot of recruiting efforts on the front end. There's DISC and personality assessments in the middle, and all these things cost a lot of money and took a lot of time to develop. So I think from a financial aspect, that's a big commitment for any firm, let alone a smaller firm like IT Direct to really invest hundreds of thousands of dollars to get behind that.
Sure.
The second piece, as we talked about, is employee development. So 2017, we launched IT Direct University. IT Direct University, it was a big undertaking. We were launching one topic a week and training all of our employees on that one topic every single week for a whole calendar year. The risk of that, we realize after the fact, is one topic a week is just too much. So
it's a lot to integrate.
Yeah, not only was it one topic a week, but it was 3 courses throughout the week if you couldn't make one of the sessions. So it was a big commitment for our internal resources to build it, plan it, teach it, and follow up with it. So we're happy to say we've scaled that down to about once a month now, which is way more effective. But I think one of the big things that's been risky is willing to risk it all. And what I mean by that is, and this is before my time at IT Direct, but there was an era where we found we were making rules for teammates that really weren't working out. We'll just create a policy for that, or we'll just create a stopgap for this, put some red tape here. And we found out we were becoming the company we didn't want to be. So we did the opposite of what most companies would do, which is we threw a handbook completely out the window, made the hard decisions to get rid of some of the folks that were causing us to make the rules, and found that the company was significantly more resilient than we thought. And all the great people stood up, and we persevered right through it. To this day, we still don't have a handbook. To this day, if we are sitting in a meeting and we find ourselves that we are trying to create extra rules, we kind of sit back and we're like, wait, why are we making these rules? Do they need to be in place, or are we just trying to shortcut a harder decision?
Yeah, I do training with one of the state agencies, and every single time I start the class, I'm like, how many of you are here today getting in a new job orientation? Because at your last job, there were 1 or more people where every day you walked in and said, how is it possible that you are still here? Right? And it's not just state, it's everywhere, that there are miserable people in our midst. And what's the impact of having somebody who is negative and complaining and breaking the rules so that you have to create new ones? You called this what?
A cancer to your culture, or cancer culture. we had kind of a similar story, and I didn't even realize it, is that when we embarked on this journey between 2014 and 2016, we turned over about 40% of our workforce. And very similar to what you talked about, like it moved people out of the way so that young stars could come up and really rise and shine. And there was something about an element of fresh eyes. We actually have the numbers to support that when we started this journey, I think between 2014 and the end of the year 2018, I believe that's the time frame, our throughput per person increased 60%. So we had the numbers to back up that this was working. But we were so afraid of losing those important people because we thought we couldn't do it without them. And what we found was that we were actually holding back people that could do even better than them. And that was just, I mean, right now, we hire slow and we fire fast. And we are just really committed to, hey, we have a process for hiring that works. If somebody doesn't align with that hiring process, it's usually a good indication that they're not a good fit for our culture, and we're trying to terminate that employment relationship within the first 90 days. Now, as much as there's culture cancers, there's also people that have culture flus, right? There are days when I don't agree with everything, or I'm having a bad day, or something like that, and I am not the advocate that I should be every day for our culture. And that's okay, right? Everybody has those days. It's when you see that repeat happening, that, hey, this person is becoming a problem. As I said before, because we turned over so much of our workforce, right now we really have people that align with our culture. Our recruiting also focuses on finding people that do align with our culture. And it's just been really fabulous, and you can tell right away when somebody isn't going to be a fit.
Okay.
So part of what I think is so interesting about your comment too is leaving room for humanity.
Yes.
Because everybody has a bad day. So
Yeah.
being able to make that distinction between this person is having a bad day versus that person is a bad day. Right?
Yes.
Because I mean, and it's also worth noting that it doesn't sound like you did that blindly or without thought or without getting more information.
Yeah.
So, I mean, a municipality that we work with right now, there was a troublesome department head. Come to find out, his mother had died, and his wife is battling breast cancer stage 4.
Mm-hmm.
So it was incumbent upon us as the people who were supporting their leadership team to be able to say, let's all make sure we're taking a breath for Bill, because he needs to have the room to be a bad day for a little while, because that's what we would want of any organization for ourselves if we were in that awful position. So I like this idea that you're looking at that so carefully and noticing those important distinctions.
I also, you kind of brought up two other things that I wanted to mention, and the fact that the people that turned over, when they first started with the company, they came on to be the best individual contributor.
Mm-hmm.
And we as a company changed our culture, and who we want to be wasn't what they aspired to be, and there wasn't an alignment there. So it was okay. You know, we parted on really great terms, which we're super proud of, but also too, it's really important to not just cut somebody off and say, oh, they're not a fit, they don't match our culture. No, it's your job as the employer to also educate them to try and get them to see the value of your culture.
So what's the relationship between performance management and the stability and growth of your company culture?
So when you're, so for our organization, we love to discuss performance. We love to meet with our team members and ensure that they're being reviewed. What we do is the evaluation process within our office, we meet 4 times a year with our employees. 2 of those times are going to be formal reviews. So you're going to sit down, you're going to go through your evaluation, review your goals. But the second time, the other 2 times I should say, you're going to just go out to lunch and discuss with your supervisor what's going on. You know, so it's more of a relationship. And you find that it builds the communication, it builds the collaboration between one another, and it builds the trust. So those are some things that we do within our organization. Now, if something is happening, you know, and there are issues or if there are areas of improvement that are needed, they're addressed right away, because you definitely want to have that communication taking place.
Sure.
We have found within our culture that communication is pretty much the key. Just tell me something's wrong. Tell me if I'm doing something wrong. Tell me if I'm doing something right too. Give me a shout out. That's the piece that you want. You definitely want people to feel good about what they're doing, and also that you care.
Yes.
You know what I mean? You want to collaborate with those individuals. You want to make sure that you're bringing the team together. And as it relates to performance, they're going to hear about the good, and they're going to hear about the bad too.
Mm-hmm.
And it's the conversation that's taking place amongst everybody within the team. How can I improve? If I see something that you're doing and it's not right, I'm not going to address it where it's, oh, that's not a good thing to be doing. I'm going to talk to you about it. We're going to figure out the best practice that can be done within the organization, and we'll figure it out. Now, if you're doing something great, well, maybe you're going to be working along with the team to say, hey, I got a best practice here, let's implement this within the office, and let's build the culture around that. So all of that communication ongoing is, we found, one of the most important pieces.
So what you're talking about is, we talk about this all the time, that clear is kind.
Clear is very kind. Clarity is the key.
Having a culture of avoidance
Absolutely.
is on the downhill side of culture.
Right, and that's
And
where,
we see that a lot in organizations.
right, and that's where the circle of safety is.
Yes.
You know what I mean? You want your organization to feel like they're protected. If I'm working for you, I want to feel safe there. I want to feel like I belong. Am I valued? That's the key piece, because if I don't get that feeling, well then I'm just going to be siloed. I'm going to be heads down doing my work, and that's within our organization. That's not what we want, and that's not what the team wants.
No.
They want to collaborate. They want to be cared for. They want to communicate. They just want to be. They want to do the best that they can, and they want to provide exceptional service.
So John, what would you say are some of the visible signs of an extraordinary culture in an organization?
Visible signs?
Yeah.
Wow. Well, let me elaborate a little more on what I was saying earlier with like the tangible, intangible, right? So there's like the things that are easy to identify, right? Like you walk into another business and do you see all smiles, or do you see like heads down at their desks? Do you see a team where everyone's kind of collaborating, talking, or is everyone just kind of face down doing their thing? Which, by the way, face down doing their thing is fine, but are they humming? Are they tapping along? Or are they just silent, trapped in their corner, right? Like, are they sitting at a desk that's got duct tape around a leg and a chair that's older than them? Or are they sitting somewhere where they feel like, okay, I've got a computer that's, reliable every day, a desk that's holding me up, this chair's super comfortable, I gotta stand up actually, I've been sitting here too long, right? Like, those are all kind of things like when people walk around the office, are they looking down at the floor or are they looking up? When you see people talking to each other, they're looking at each other in the face, are they holding that level of confidence and comfort? Those are all like very like simple signs to see like, is this a great company?
Yep. What about dogs?
It all depends on everyone's environment, right? Like here, we allow people to bring pets in. Obviously, there's some like rules and caveats behind it, only because it's not a litter box, and we're on the phones a lot. So if you have an animal that barks a lot, like this may not be the right fit.
Right.
But some companies may have allergies or whatnot, and so you got to take all that into consideration. For us, we're lucky where no one really does. So we have an office dog. He's not here today though. But, we've got, I don't even know what the animal's called. We've got one employee who's got like these flying squirrels. What are they called? Sugar gliders, thank you, yeah. He's got sugar gliders that live in his shirt. You don't even know they're here. I mean, it's pretty impressive, right? But to add to that, one of the things that we've really expanded on over the last couple of years, realizing that we have the opposite of you guys. So like, our average age was much lower years ago, and now as they're getting older, they're having families of their own, and families have obligations and kids who can't go to school that day or what have you. So we've been creating an environment where it's okay to bring your child to work. Here's some things to keep them busy. You know what I mean? You do you, we do us. It's good to go. If you need the day off, you need the day off. But if not, it's okay to bring your kids to work, and let's find ways to keep them busy.
Boy, parents must breathe knowing that.
Yeah,
that if there's
I hope so.
A school delay or something like that.
Yeah.
Right? What are the little things? What are the little things that make it a sticky culture, a place where people want to be?
I think we're all about being family first. And it doesn't matter how you define your family, because we're young, sometimes that means, hey, I want to leave early on a Friday to go hang out with my friends and maybe do a long weekend. If you have kids too, it can be that, but just understanding that quality of life is really what it is. Quality of life means different things to different people, but no matter what, we support what your quality of life is. We like to have fun. We do trips, like group trips, like we went tubing. We celebrate, we have a lot of 21st birthdays. We celebrate a lot of that. Just fun things. We do a 5K, and sometimes we do a mud run. And just opportunities to hang out as a team. And when you have an organization where people want to spend time outside of work, I think that's really positive as well. That's very telling.
Yeah. So what's, in your two offices, what are some of the strategies to help blend? We hear a lot about there being 5 generations in the workplace, right? And so what are you seeing?
So what I'm seeing is, just recently I had a conversation with one of my colleagues today about the next gen group that we want to develop within the office. And just being a little bit older than he is, okay, just having that conversation with him and working together and kind of coming together with different ideas and different views as to how that particular group would work within the company, getting my opinion and giving him some wisdom in a sense. Does that make sense? And telling him, reach out to everybody, because everybody within the organization wants to contribute to that. Even though it's a next gen group that you want to develop, everybody has great ideas, and maybe just take that one piece from, I don't know who it would be within the company, maybe that one piece is really what's going to launch it. Mm-hmm. So I see that coming across with different age groups.
Sure. John?
I don't know how much I have to add to this, only because I find that here, we just treat everyone the same. So it's not like we're trying to, we don't have like what you have, which is like trying to influence like younger folks to come into IT. Mm-hmm. It's mostly young folks who are trying to get to IT, right? Mm-hmm. So if anything, we may have like the reverse effect, where sometimes we're hiring people who might be a little later in their career, and helping them feel more comfortable in a younger environment. Mm-hmm. But a lot of that really just boils down to treat them the same. Yep. Give them the same tools, the same parameters, the same the same tool belt and everything they need to fill the tool belt to be successful every day.
Okay. Jenny, you're sitting there making copious notes as you usually do.
I know. I am a scribe. That's how I process information.
I'm going to give you a second to ask what curious questions are bubbling up, and then it's going to be your turn for Q&A with the audience. Okay?
Yeah. So I actually don't have any curious questions at the moment. Although I have a question for all of you. Would you like my copious notes? White paper. I realized that. I should put this in a white paper for everybody. So I will do that for you. But what curious questions do you have? What are you hearing that's resonating for you? What's making you say, I want to understand that more?
Yeah, well, I actually have a question because you're manufacturing. So what's the size of your organization, first of all?
35 full-time employees.
So because we're very much about culture ourselves, and we've done over the last couple of years, we're a 300-person company.
What company is it?
OK Industries.
Okay.
So manufacturing, I know, we're better than OK.
You really never run out of jokes that
Somebody's name. What are you going to do?
So, but obviously culture, and it starts from the president down, which is wonderful, and we've done a lot of change, and we've got 2 HR people here and our person. But how do you, we talk about like a lot of these things, which all sound great, and I'd love to have my dog at work and a lot of those things, but it's that office culture and that worker on the line culture that we struggle, right? And we don't want to have the divide, and I think we're working very hard not to have it. But I'm curious what your thoughts are, because, sorry, I'm long-winded here, but you have a production worker. I can't say to that production worker, you know what, you feel like taking Friday off, go for it. Good, go, you know what I mean? I need you on the line, kind of working. So it's adapting that sense that we want them to feel, we want to treat everybody the same, we want everybody, you know what I'm saying? So I think we struggle with that. And so I'm curious if there's thoughts, ideas. It's not just all, professional type environment.
I can just talk about sorry, Ari, did you
No,
have
no,
something?
no, please, no.
Okay. So we are all about serving our internal customer, and we've put a lot of effort into educating people about who their internal customer is. And I get it, it's so much easier when you have 35 people compared to 300, right? But educating who your internal customer is and how you can positively affect them and making sure that you don't have a negative effect. So, okay, you want to leave early on a Friday afternoon. Are you holding up production so that you are going to be requiring somebody to work, you know, over the weekend? It's that mutual respect. We call it quality of life, having more time, more money, less stress. Quality of life is one of the components of our vision. So everybody's is different, but you still have to maintain and respect other people's. And that has really allowed us to allow people to take time off when they want to. From kind of an office standpoint, I've really made a committed effort to be making sure that I'm having one-on-one conversations with people, not anything to do with development, but just, hey, how are you doing? Do you need anything? You know, how's your day going? Hey, how's your kid doing? You know, that sort of thing, kind of helping to bridge that gap a little bit.
Another thing that I heard inside the commentary, I'm sorry, I know I saw your hand up, I just wanted to add this. I heard during the conversation about a willingness across the board to challenge the status quo in the way that each of these companies functions. And I wonder what it would be, what might be available for you in sort of going back to the drawing board from the view of operations and processes, because very often what we see in companies across sectors is that if there's an issue with culture, there's a related process challenge, because they can feed each other in ways that literally bottleneck one another. So that might be a worthwhile area for you to explore as well, is to consider, okay, you know, obviously we can't have a dog on the shop floor, but is this one process that's over here impacting all of these other pieces, a la what you're saying? So that might be a consideration, and we've seen that work really well in some of our manufacturing type clients.
I just wanted to add something. Two things I would say. One is, we didn't do anything good overnight. It just feels like it when you hear about it 10 years after we started it, all this like great stuff. Every little thing seemed like it was impossible to do, and we just did one thing and it worked, and we did more things and they worked, and we did some things and they didn't work. We had John and I prep for this. We're talking about I try and figure everything that didn't work. That's just how I do, because otherwise I don't want to fear new stuff. But so it's hard for me to think of. But he was like, "Oh, don't you remember that? And don't you remember that?" And I was like, "Oh, I try not to." So it was just a matter of not being afraid to try something and just get started and then build on it, and understanding that, going back to the communication, not everybody is doing the same role, so not everyone's going to have the same things, right? So the benefit of being in the office maybe is you might have a little more flexibility during the day, but I expect you to be answering that cell phone on the weekends. But if you're on the line, I don't expect you to be answering your call on Sunday because you're not on the line, right? So there's different pros and cons there. And I also wanted to prompt Kylee for something, which is something I'm trying to figure out how we can replicate. Well, two things, right? You guys do a ton with emotional intelligence, which I think is super important, not just at leadership level, but you push that throughout, which is huge.
Yes.
And the other thing that you guys are doing, which I also want to learn to replicate, is they force people to switch jobs. They've created this whole system where they move people from cell to cell. It's crazy. And at first when I talked to Ray, I was like, dude, that's wicked inefficient, right? I just became good at something. Just when you become professional or proficient and expert, they move you. And you're like, that's crazy. But what's the overall flow, and you can speak to it more than I am, was somehow this what I perceive to be this horrible individual pain has somehow manifested into macro massive gain. And I could see, I understand how this process works, so I improve my flow to make that better because I know the pain that came from here to there. It's been so interesting. And going back to us end on this, but you said invest. Ray at Westminster spent a lot of energy and money to get to the bigger flow. So it was 2 years of not as good for 3, 4, 5, 6 years of amazing financial results.
With emotional intelligence, understanding, just being more open to different isn't wrong. It's also, I think that there's a little bit, it's very hard for people to understand that, okay, yes, I'm leaving, I left the office at 2:30 today to come here and talk, right? everyone's like, oh, that, that's so great. They don't know that I spent an hour last night prepping, and that, they don't see that. So you have to educate and talk about, hey, this person, they're answering the phone on a Sunday when a customer has a problem. I think that's an interesting piece too.
Well, the other thing that we've seen very often with the manufacturing clients that we've worked with is that even on the manufacturing side of the equation, folks are very siloed into the pods that they work in. Sometimes it's because of their primary language, right? So the question is, and the challenge I would think from a cultural perspective is, how do you generate a sense of belonging how do you break down the silos, and get folks maybe to a higher sense of, we belong to this bigger organization and this is why what we do matters, right? Because I definitely saw that at one of our clients, they said we have Vietnamese people here, we have Latino people here, we have, Korean people over here, and they communicate, but they don't really interact. And they certainly don't interact with the office staff because nobody speaks Korean or Spanish, So there's that piece too. The diversity piece is huge, right? And then you have engineers who can't speak to any of them. So hopefully you're raising up your supervisors and bringing in ESL, right? So you've got things that are barriers to corporate culture unless you get really intentional, and that's what we've seen about, like, how do we create a we from the United Nations that's out there in our manufacturing facility?
Cornhole.
What'd you say?
Cornhole.
There you go. So, right, we can all play.
Right.
We can all dance.
We do, because we're manufacturing, so we have a front, and we have a back,
Yeah.
upstairs and a downstairs, and
Yep.
we have cornhole tournaments, and it's pick the names out for who your partner is, and everybody's come together, and it's great. Right, Paul?
Yep.
Especially when you win.
Well, part of what I hear inside that is there are a couple of things that are interesting, which are you're making effort to create connectivity.
Yeah.
Right, so if I consider one of the common themes I heard across the board here, go back to my wonderful notes, I heard a couple of key themes. I heard intentionality, I heard constant activity, I heard relationship, which to me translates also as connection. Humans crave connection, now more than ever in the landscape of technology. So making room for connection and relationship in any way that you can is going to move your culture forward. Then I also heard community, so developing that sense of we, that we're all rowing our oars in the same direction. And that does require intentionality, absolutely, across the board.
All right.
I was just curious if I want to talk about if they feel that there's like a positive correlation between better culture equals better business results. Like for any finance people in the room, right? Like is this just money sunk, or is there positive ROI?
I mean, I'll speak, I don't have any measured ROI on it, but everything you read and everything we experience every day is, as the team is happier, they are happier at their work. They're doing a better job. When they're talking to the customer is getting a better experience.
Right.
When the customer is getting a better experience, the overall relationship gets stronger. When the overall relationship gets stronger, everyone's moving in the right direction, which hopefully turns into some really good ROI. Whether it's emotional ROI or financial ROI, it's there for everybody either way.
Yeah.
What about when you don't have ROI? What about if you're a nonprofit, you don't have anything to invest?
Well, that's what I'm saying, whether it's financial ROI or just emotional ROI, right? Like, if at the end of the day, if everyone loves doing what if everyone loves what they're doing at their job every day, they're going to be a lot more pleasant when they're on the phone or replying to an email or even working with their internal clients, right? Like, the actual communication, the experience every time will be a lot more positive. So what the ROI there is a better culture. The ROI is a team who loves coming to work every day and loves working with the individuals that they're working with.
And actually, I would say that particularly the nonprofit, because we've seen this with AARP when we've done a lot of work with them, their ROI is great ambassadors for their mission, right? So in the nonprofit sector, you want people who are really engaging and saying, this is what Favor's about, here's what's in it for you to care, right?
I think it's also okay, just real quick, to develop small teams of good culture.
Yeah.
Instead, you don't have to attack the whole organization. You can, if it's your team of 5, food is an amazing, common thing to bring people together. Everybody like that sort of thing, but you can start small and have a big effect.
Yeah, but I feel like in the nonprofit world, well, I'm gonna just speak for Favor. We do have that. We have teams But then I feel like it's looked at, okay, like everyone's separating everyone, so then you don't wanna exclude someone, but it's like, we already have this niche. So it's difficult when you don't really have the money to like do things like team build and all this other
But
stuff.
I think, I mean, to your point, food does bring everybody together.
It does.
There's no question about that, trust me. We have food frenzies and whatnot, and people actually love to cook at those food frenzies. And I think when you extend the invitation maybe to those people that are off to the side that you usually don't invite, that,
It's not even about inviting, it's that they don't come.
but that's okay. That's okay. It's not, I guess for me and for our organization, that's okay if they don't want to participate. But you're still inviting them, and there's this sense of being, belonging still. And I go back to that. It's still that circle of safety. They're still part of your organization, and it just may be that they're shy. They just don't want to. That's okay. It's extending that and trying to still bring people together.
Mhm.
You're a bright light within the culture. Continue it, and that's what's going to extend out to everybody else. It's like people like you, like being those bright lights and coming up with those ideas. People eventually may participate.
And if you're a group of 5 now and one more person joins, I mean, that's
Yeah.
20% growth. And then if you just continue that 20% growth rate because you're inviting more people, if you invite 10 and only 3 come, it's still a good, you know what I mean? And the larger it gets, eventually more people who want to
Yeah.
contribute and join it, and eventually it becomes unavoidable and it will just take over.
I
I
see
think too, like,
hands here and there, so yes, no, please go ahead.
I was just gonna say really quickly, I think we feel your nonprofit pain because we are as well. We're probably thinking many of the same things. I think one of the things we've done where we are is we bring ourselves to the employees. So we have multiple sites and multiple different services that we provide. We started something called leadership rounding. So our members of our senior management team go to the employees. And we just check in, like how are you, what's going well, what's not going well. And we've gotten really positive feedback from that. And they tell us what's not going well, we fix it, and we fix it fast if we can fix it. And then if we can't, we explain why we can't fix it. Usually they understand. So I think that's one strategy, instead of trying to get everyone together, to go to them.
To be visible.
Yes.
Leadership visible within an organization. We can't ever undervalue FaceTime
Yeah.
and knowing people's names and knowing what's important to them. I'll share quickly, my daughter works in a zoo. And I asked her, why do you love working? Because every day she drives 45 minutes each way to make $12 an hour. As a zookeeper, she has a full-time job. I said, why do you love it there? She said, the owner of the zoo is also the lead veterinarian, and she visits every department once a day. She checks in to see what's up with the animals. She's asking us for our advice about what we could do better or differently. And once a week, they all get together for lunch. And during the winter, when there's no public there, they're eating lunch together every day. They do cross-functional work all the time. She said it's a learning environment all the time. And we're always invited. Like, you always feel welcome no matter what part of the organization you're going into. You feel welcome and your questions are welcome, right? So what efforts are we making within our own organizations as leadership to get to know people personally, to find out what's their passion, to help them connect to other people who have the same passion within the organization, to create more we talk about connective tissue. Like, how do we build more connective tissue within workplaces so people feel like they belong, they're cared about, and that they can share their joy, right? Because when great things happen, you want everybody to be going, yes, we did that together. So I have one question for you, Tonya.
Sure.
You told me you have 7 new people starting, is that right?
Yes, just this week. We
Out of
onboarded some people.
Right.
It was great. It was great. So
7 new people out of 25 has the ability to impact your culture,
yes.
by the numbers. So what specific kinds of things do you do to anticipate the impact of new people coming in?
So there's plenty of anticipation. It really was a positive experience, because prior to them coming on board, we came together as a team just to figure out what's the best way to onboard everybody. What is going to be best for every single employee within the company? How is it going to change things within the organization? Because your culture is going to change once you start adding people. If you don't maintain it, the culture will just become different. But what we did was just talk about the best way to bring them on. When they did come on board, we actually had a staff meeting. We have a staff meeting every week just to, one, see how people are doing too, and check in. And sat there and just kind of told them, explained to them and made them feel welcome, is pretty much what it comes down to. I could summarize it, we're making them feel welcome and having every team member participate in their onboarding process, whether it was explaining what the culture was, whether it's explaining what compliance was, or marketing, or what financial planning was. Every individual from each department sat down with those new team members and spoke to them about, hey, this is how we operate, this is how we work.
Mm-hmm.
And again, it goes back to communication. Communication as to what their role is going to be, communication to how we operate, and communication as to what our culture is like. It's different than what they had experienced, but they're so happy. We received feedback from them just from like walking in the hallway. They're like, this is great. You guys made us feel so welcome. This was an easy transition from us. Give or take, there's a lot of back office stuff that needs to be done, but from a relationship standpoint, it's awesome. It really is incredible to bring on new people that fit into your culture, and to go back to what you were explaining, the onboarding process with them. There has to be a fit in order to become an employee, or else you will have the culture cancer.
So something really interesting is jumping out at me about what you just said. One theme I heard, I don't know if you all heard this, but I heard a theme also around we're taking an eye to the future. Because as leaders, it's our job to have both the micro and the macro view at any given moment of what's going on inside our organizations. Is that true or true? Right? So we can have the narrow view of, well, everything's fine now. But that view is going to take us to fine now. It's not, it doesn't, if we're stuck inside that little bubble of everything's working great right now, then we're not looking at where are we trying to accelerate and grow to? Where are we aiming to get to? What's coming down the pipeline, right? The workforce, for example, is changing dramatically. Just multi-generation. Tonya and I were talking about multi-generational workforces being a significant component of how the workforce is changing now. So there's the small way of looking at the future, which is this is our onboarding process right now. This is what we need to look to for the next 6, 9, 12 months. And then there's the macro view, which is what changes are coming down the pipeline that I need to remember for 5 years out? Because culture is a living entity, and we have to consider that always when we look at things.
I just wanted, one thing we haven't talked on, we touched on it, danced around a little bit, but I think maybe a little bit more topic would be interesting, is how important new employee onboarding is. That's where the whole culture thing starts, right? It's getting them indoctrinated into the culture and making them feel part of it right from day one. So, I mean, John, you've been a huge part of our blue jacket process, but maybe we could talk a little bit about how you onboard to make that.
And what Ari's talking about is, if at the recruiting is where the culture really starts, well then when they come in the door, it's got to be equally as rewarding for them as all the work they went through to get to the door.
Yes.
So a lot of our teammates, when they come in, I shouldn't say a lot, all of our teammates, when they come in, before they've even started, we've mailed a card to their house where every employee signed it, just saying, welcome aboard. No one does it. But you know what I mean? Like, I'll get a phone call literally the day after it gets to their house, and they're like, this is great. I can't wait for my first day. Right? And then they'll come into their first day. Their first day is pre-planned with, here's where you're training, here's, you're going to have some group collaboration over here, you're going to shadow with these people over here. At noon, you're going to lunch with your boss. You're doing all these pieces your first day. They flip over that sheet. Their next 2 weeks meetings are already pre-booked, planned. They already know what they need to do. When they come to their desk, we've got some books, we've got shirts that are their size on their desk, ready to go, a bow or something big that says, welcome to the team. So as soon as they walk in the door, they're like, holy smokes, what is this place?
Not many people want to
Right?
work here.
Right? So, and to Ari's point, I mean, every single teammate we brought on, we just think of more great things that we can do, and they're all little things that make a difference. And it just keeps growing and growing from there. And we have a team who's all involved in like trying to help the process. We check in with new employees quite frequently, to see how it's going. To just keep enhancing that over and over and over again.
So one thing that recently added was the scavenger hunt.
Yes.
which I think has been really awesome, right? They have things they have to find,
That's
or
awesome.
find out like who's the longest tenured employee. Like, go ask this question, right? They have to fill out. They're accountable. Here's the dates you have to have this information by. It makes them go out and engage with people and be in the environment, right? And be out there and engaging. So,
Yeah.
I mean, there's been a lot of really cool stuff.
And sometimes we do a really bad job of telling people, like, hey, we have somebody new coming on. I feel like that has to be a great way to get existing employees to be like, oh, hey, we have this new person coming on, they're going to be doing that. Have you seen any of that?
No, I mean, for sure. I mean, are we great at letting everybody know we're hiring somebody every time? For the most part, but do we slip every once in a while, or someone maybe not here? It helps
Yes.
fill that gap for sure, right? So that way they're like, wait, who? Where? Oh, yes. Oh, I did hear somebody talk about that, right? And
Yeah.
they felt their card like, sweet, you know, and depending on their role in the company, they're like, am I going to meet with them? Like, when am I going to meet with them? Should I just, and the conversation steamrolls from there.
I love that.
You know, Ari, one of the things I want to add, particularly in manufacturing, what we've seen is people who are really good at doing a thing get promoted to lead, and now they're supervising people doing a thing, and they're doing the thing. And then they get promoted to supervisor, and they're supervising the leads, and they're supervising the people, and they've never once gotten any kind of supervisory training. And so, you know, when we talk about a culture crasher, what we've seen in the manufacturing world is you can have a really high-performing team. One person gets put in a position of management who only knows the best way that he or she gets something done and doesn't have the bandwidth to explain it to other people, and you start having a lot of challenges. So, you know, I would toss that out there. As much as we value the new people coming in, how do we continue to build the asset of the people who are already there so that they don't squash the culture of all the effort that you're putting into creating something, right? That, because people leave bad managers, they don't leave jobs.
No, totally. That's actually something that we've really, going back to your comment earlier, Jenny, is as we've been growing as a company, we've been looking ahead saying, you know, how do we keep the team scaling, and how do we keep them supported, and how do we keep developing everybody? And we realized we're going to just proactively start promoting leaders now.
Yeah.
You know, so as a company of only 42 employees, our leadership team this year has become quite large. And part of that is we brought in 5, 6 new leaders into the team, and we built out a whole leadership development program, which meets once a week, and it goes through all the pieces that take you from, you know, being a player to being a coach, because it's a big gap. And one of the biggest gaps there is not only what you need to do and how you need to do it, but it's how the team is going to look at you differently.
Yes.
And how you're going to respond to that and still be an effective coach while still being an effective player at the same time.
We've been through like a whole culture thing. We haven't talked a lot about mission, vision, and values, which I know is kind of like played out in a lot of ways, but I think it's so critical, you know, and I think it's important that that is real. And I mean, we didn't really come up, but you know, we've taken that to a level. That's how we used to train our leaders. That's how we use. So every meeting in IT Direct with 3 or more people, we have in every meeting room, in everyone's desk, we have a printed out laminated of our mission, vision, and values, and we literally go around the room and read them. We do a 360 review 4 times a year. All that we ask is, are you not meeting, or exceeding expectations on our core values? That's the entire thing, and not anonymous. It's all up front with comments, and we provide feedback. So that provides, I think, just talking about how to build leaders is like, we need to empower people. So giving them the guideline. Here's our mission. Here's our purpose to be an organization. Here's the way we achieve that mission, and then empower people to kind of do that. So, and John's not saying a lot about it, but he has been the most amazing culture champion that we've ever had. I mean, his ability to kind of get people to buy in and understand how to believe it and do it is second to none. You're not allowed to hire him, but it's been really good.
We'll talk after a couple of beers.
And he's talking about this lieutenant training that he's put up, this weekly training. I mean, the impact of that, of doing leadership training around our culture and how it's worked out, the impact has been phenomenal. It's only been doing it 6 months, and it's been a world of impact.
I have a final question for the group, and then we're going to be around. We just want to be respectful of the fact that there's beer downstairs. So obviously you didn't start out as culture champions for your organizations. How have you developed yourselves? Like, how did you turn on your own bright light? What did you read? What do you read on a daily basis? Where do you get your inspiration to continue to carry that torch?
Well, the last book that I just read was Leaders Eat Last. I found that one you could definitely take pieces of that and just apply it within your culture. I referenced the circle of safety. That's where that comes from. And it just stuck with me. It just really applied to our culture within Connecticut Wealth Management, that, when you're communicating with everybody, when you have this circle of safety and you feel like you belong and you're valued, and you just tell me how it's going type of deal, like where I fit within the organization, that is so important. And it really kind of clicked, at least with our culture. And I spoke to some of my colleagues about it too, and they're like, yeah, as long as there's communication taking place within the organization, and I know where I stand, if I'm doing something great, as I mentioned before, let me know, just give me a little shout out. If I'm not doing things the way that it should be, communicate with me. I want to improve. I want to provide the best service. I want to be a great teammate. And you mentioned like being off some days. Everybody has those off days.
Yes.
And when you have this circle of safety, your team members understand. And your team members will come up to you and say, how is it going? What is going on? And that's so important. That's when you know that your culture within the company there's this bond between people. So that's reading books such as like that. And Leadership Greater Hartford is a great organization too, and they actually had a breakdown of that book, and they do that quite often. So that's one of the places that I reach out to.
Thank you. John?
For me, kind of getting into culture and leadership and development was probably the opposite of what most people experience. So it's kind of like, thinking back when you're a kid, you either look up to your parents and you want to be like them, or you look at your parents like, whoa, I got to be different. My career started the latter, which was like I worked at a great company. It was growing great, but it was just two owners the company was growing. It was just do. And so I really was like, okay, like, we've got to develop more, like I need to be better. And then as I started making myself better, I started realizing how I could share that information and spreading it around. So I don't know if that really connects to the first half of the question, but the second half, I love like article-based reading. Like I do read a lot of books. Lately I'm in a Patrick Lencioni kick, so I've been reading a lot of his books. And a lot of military leadership books. Like I don't know why those are a lot of fun for me. But you'll be surprised, just like, a lot of people get stuck in like YouTube and like, well, I do that with like random articles, I'll Google like a culture article, and before you know it, you're in a leadership article, before you know it, you're in a recruiting article, before you know it, you're in like an M&A article, and you're like, well, this sounds interesting, whatever, just keep reading.
Right.
But, it just, the articles for me in my like very, very short track mind where I like to jump around all the time, you got 2 minutes per article, you move on, and what's great about the article-based learning that has worked well for me is I run into so many great articles that I can share with the team.
Yes.
And one thing that I like to do before I share it is I very clearly say, like, team, look at this 3-minute read. When someone sees 3 minutes, they're like, oh, I could read for 3 minutes. This is fun. Let's check it out. Where if you just send a link, they're like, great, another link from John. How long is this one? What's going to be, right?
Flag it, never get
So
back.
telling them up front, like, hey, this 3-minute lead's going to impact you here,
Yes.
and sharing that all around
Yeah.
really allows me to feel like I'm helping to spread everything that I'm taking in.
Great, very proactive.
Yeah, I think for me, it's attending events like this is really impactful, and having, if I have a question, I now have 2 more resources that I already have your guys' contact information. And I'm going to meet, and we're probably going to be talking more. You always have that resource to be like, hey, I'm running into this, and I don't really know what to do. I use the term borrow with pride. So if you learn something from an organization, take it away, implement it. And also too, I think I've been finding that I haven't been reading as much, but the article base definitely seems to resonate. And using LinkedIn, you kind of just get sucked into that
sucked in.
vortex.
Oh yeah.
And, you're just like, whoa, where'd the time go?
No, absolutely.
Not on race time though.
Well, we actually surveyed them by email and have a list for everybody in the back of the room of favorite leadership books, podcasts, resources online, so that you can follow up, investing in your own learning, and then inviting other people to share in the joy of figuring out how to make positive change is very inspiring. So we just want to thank them. As I said, we'll all be around, so have a beer.
All right.
Thank you.